Morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Tamara Johnson Sheely. It is Saturday, May 9th, and I am sleepy this morning, but I'm here. Let me see where my trusty co-host is. Let's see. There he is.
Good morning,
Morning.
Tamara. Good morning,
How
everybody.
how are you, David?
Doing fine. Doing
I'm
fine.
sleepy.
Um, I, I did my morning exercise, so I'm a little bit more awake. Uh, so yeah, um,
A lot of
we're
things
having a
going
polar
on.
vortex, and the polar vortex is bringing in all of this unseasonably cold weather, and it's a result of the climate change because the warming of the climate has slowed down the polar um, jet stream, and that makes it dip down, into the temperate zone. Uh, so that's why we're having this cold snap. Well, it's not really, but you know,
It's
it,
cold.
it's cold. It's cold, and part of the reason that it's cold is because of the climate shift, and we get more of these more frequently. Um, so anyway,
Yeah. 2020, David, has been off to a
oh,
what I don't even know what kind of start this is. I actually just saw where Andre Harrell, he's a producer. You I'm sure you don't know who he is. He passed away. I just see now on social media that little Richard passed away. I'm like, what?
Little Richard, really?
That's what I'm seeing now on social media. 35,
Uh-huh.
where little Richard
Wow.
has passed away. You know, we started out with Kobe and his daughter, and it's just I don't know what 2020 is, but it ain't been pretty. But
Yeah, yeah,
mm,
yeah. And that guy Williams who wrote "Stand by Me," he's gone, and a lot of others, a lot of others, a lot
mhm.
of other really uh, people who have been struck down by this COVID-19. Um, a lot of them taken when they didn't necessarily have to be taken uh, away, at least at this particular point. But uh, we ought to talk about what's happening in Georgia, and what is the possibilities of this reopening of the state, and where things are likely to flare up again, because it's almost inevitable that with the lack of precautions that are being taken, a lack of testing, we are essentially uh, behind the wheel of a car going 60 miles an hour blindfolded, and that's that. I mean, it's possible that we'll stay on the road, but it's also possible, very very possible, that we're going to hit something, or we're going to go off when the highway takes a curve. So
Yesterday, I
um,
saw on the news, David, that we had doubled our testing in the past 10 days.
who is we?
Georgia has.
Georgia?
Hmm.
Yeah, well, that still makes it, we need 5 times more than the doubling.
Yep.
So,
Yep. But I think we are moving in the right direction. As we talked about, I just, so many people can't afford to just stay and sit. So moving forward, we don't have a choice. And those that are older, of course, the shelter in place is still in, being asked that that you do stay in place, that you don't get out and about. So,
well, that's, here in Georgia, where we are the headquarters of the CDC, of Centers for Disease Control, it's absurd what's going on. It's just absurd. Uh, and I know that you're on the side of people have to work, but it's the
people have
other
to eat, people have to pay their bills, people have to survive. And
Well,
Georgia is
there's
not
a
provided
way
for.
of doing that with collective action, that doesn't put people in danger. And the people who are being put in danger are generally the most vulnerable people. Um, so there's that's the irony of it.
But you
And
have a state, David, where you have the House, the Senate, and the governor's office that is Republican, and they're not willing to do anything more. What do you do when you have to feed your family and you have to eat and you have to survive? You can't sit and wait for them to send you a check. You gotta go. You gotta go to work.
yeah, well, I know, and we've had this conversation, last week, week before, and it's the only thing that I can say is that we really need to be um, aware that this is the contradiction that people are facing.
Mhm.
Uh, that they're being forced into making the most horrible choices, um, and that it is exactly that Republican governor and both houses of the state legislature that are doing it to them. So the conclusion is fight. I'm there. I mean I feel
Yeah, I agree. Fight, 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 fight. But today, I gotta eat. I gotta feed my family, so I gotta go to work.
yeah. Well, I think we need to be very um, clear about who it is who's on in the most vulnerable position.
Mhm.
It's people in those poultry plants in Gainesville, in Hall County. It's people in nursing homes. It's people in prisons and jails, uh, all of whom. And here's the secret message that I think that the governor and the Republicans are sending. It's that the white people are not the most vulnerable people, and so you know um, they are sending, it seems to me, a dog whistle message that the deaths are going to be and the illnesses are going to be mostly people of color, particularly African Americans. So don't worry about it. um, we will your privileged status as whites is going to be is going to protect you. And I really think that European Americans ought to think about that, you know, long and hard, before they make those kind of dehumanizing to themselves decisions about what they're going to support and where they're going to allow themselves to be led, and who they are going to have speaking for them. Because ultimately, what's going to happen is that the virus does not distinguish between European American and African American, and that the people who are in the jails and prisons either get out or spread it to the guards and prison personnel. The folks that are in nursing homes have people who are taking care of them, who spread the virus to the larger community. That's what they mean by a communicable disease. This thing is highly contagious, and uh, and uh, and it's spread by people who do not have symptoms. And so, and it spreads to people who are the most immunocompromised folks. And there are a lot of poor white working people in Georgia who have no health insurance, who are obese, who have asthma, who have diabetes, this is one of the most unhealthy states because we don't have health insurance for people, and they are going to get sick. And they're also the ones who are close to the people who are in the most, in the hotspot categories of the meat processing or poultry processing plants. the prison guards, the folks who are forced out there into public uh, public facing jobs, um,
You
and
tapping the table because your camera's shaking.
yeah, and that's going to be the story. So I hope that there is some way to get the message to those folks that they may not be the most vulnerable, but the tip of the most vulnerable, but they are part of that group. And so,
And you know what, David? Black people, brown people know this. We know this. This is totally our reality. But when the governor opened up the state, a lot of people needed to go back to work, and they did.
well, I'm just hoping that I'm hoping against hope because I really have no way of getting this message across to working class whites. I hope there are people who are listening to this who will hear that and get the message out to them that their interests really lie with black and brown working people, um, and they ought to think twice about accepting that that dirty, filthy message that I think is really being transmitted out out to the public by the Republicans. And if the Democrats don't call them out on it, then they're complicit. You know, so this is a legacy of years of Democrats not being willing to go out and organize poor whites and just remaining in their enclaves, uh, either African American or, liberal middle class, so-called middle class white enclaves, and not going out and really challenging the Republicans for that working class base. It's not easy, but it's necessary work to be done. So,
Jay Smith, he's down in Savannah, running for commissioner. Yeah, we'll have to have him on.
oh yeah,
That'd
yeah,
be great.
right.
I mean,
I think I met him a couple of times.
racism is alive and well in Georgia, David.
Yeah,
Brunswick
yeah,
is another example of how black and brown people, our lives are just not valued. This boy was jogging. I have two sons, and I live in this white
yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah,
And I've had conversations with both my sons about jogging, and they're both runners, and they like to run. I have to tell my sons, don't wear your hoodie when you jog in this neighborhood. We live here, and I
yeah,
have to tell both of them not to wear their hoodies when they jogging in our neighborhood in the daytime.
yeah. Well, clearly that's what
I,
Ahmaud.
I get nervous, David, when they walk out the house after dark
Yeah,
in my own neighborhood, because I
yeah,
know how black and brown people are perceived, and it's scary. And racism is alive and well right here in Georgia. And Ahmaud was running, he was jogging, and he was gunned down. Reminds me so much of Trayvon Martin. It reminds me of so much of all the others that
yeah,
killed at the hands of police.
yeah. Trayvon Martin was, from what I've been listening on the news, would have been the same age within 5 days of Ahmaud Arbery. If he had lived. And we have two prosecutors who recused themselves. We got the older McMichael, who's a 20-year veteran of the police department in Brunswick and of the investigators office. I mean, these are the people who are doing this stuff. It's really um, kind of amazing that
So where do white people get off, David, with and this is some history that you and I have actually talked about before. Where do they get off thinking that they could stop you and tell you that to stop doing whatever it is you're doing. Like they are the police. You and I have talked about, this is,
This is slave patrol stuff. I mean, that's really basically what it is. It's a slave patroller mentality. Um, these guys are. It seems to me, that there's a set of assumptions there, and they're being followed by a guy who's taking videos. You know, who thinks that the videos actually absolve them from wrongdoing, and um, so 2 months go by before they're arrested for and who uncovered that video, who got that video out to the public. I'm not sure if that was reporters or if this accomplice volunteered it, but uh, you know it's really, I understand exactly how you feel. Not, I don't understand exactly how you feel, but I certainly can empathize with how you feel about your sons. Um, what is this? What is this What is this Brunswick neighborhood that he was Santilla or something like that? Is that a black neighborhood, or is it an integrated area? Um, it's
No,
It
I
really
wanted to
is.
just talk about. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that neighborhood. I've followed this, David. I can only absorb so much of this. I found that,
um,
I couldn't watch the video. I couldn't watch the video. And when I couldn't watch Philando Castile's video either. I couldn't watch.
Yeah,
I can't watch that stuff. I know
yeah,
it happened, but I cannot watch it. So I
yeah,
follow enough to know that something has to be done. Whatever I can do in whatever capacity I'm in to do it, I will absolutely do it. Um, but our reality in this country, racism, like I say, is alive and well here in Georgia and across this nation.
yeah. And I really think that also, once again, um, that the the way in which people are harassed in general by the police stems from this, kind of behavior. That it's the uh, European Americans thinking and acting white that gives permission to police and to um, people who think they are deputized to act in this way, that allows this to happen and gives the police free reign in any number of other circumstances, including in corruption. You know, um, so that everyone in the end, every working class person pays the price. So I'm adding that in just so that we're thinking, uh, in terms of class as well as in terms of race. Because just
Mhm.
like the situation with the pandemic, um, the European American working people are not immune to this kind of thing, and in the general society, the police being a corrupt uh, uh, um, law unto themselves is really a direct outgrowth of the white supremacy and the permissiveness of European Americans toward that white supremacy, as if it does not affect them. You know, so that's one of the big lessons I think that we need to get across to whites. Um, the policeman in your neighborhood may be your friend, but the police system overall is really, and the criminal justice system overall is based on hierarchies of the golden rule. You know, he's got the gold rules, and justice is just for us. Wealthy people who can afford lawyers and protect themselves. So, um,
And
um,
people are locked up and killed.
What's that?
I said, and black and brown people are locked up.
Locked up and killed. Yes. Yeah, and Michelle Alexander was on MSNBC on Chris Hayes last night, making exactly this point. The author of the new Jim Crow, and she talked about the fact that this society may target the African Americans for incarceration, hyper incarceration, but and have a more empathetic and humanistic attitude towards white working people who have been the the victims and the targets of this mass opioid crisis. But basically, they're getting no help, and there's 15,000, 20,000 people a year who are dying from that, from opioid and related, opioid induced deaths. So we have these folks are dying of whiteness because this hyper incarceration response to African American use of drugs is a directly connects to the failure of having a public health system that would treat and address the issues of drug addiction as a medical problem, which is exactly what it is, and which we've known for 40 years that it's a medical problem.
Well,
So
it became more of a medical problem when like you said, the opioid addiction, when that came along. But when it was crack, and it was it's been marijuana and crack, it was a black people problem. It was we need to lock them up.
Exactly, and the more that it became a police problem, a criminal problem, the less it was considered. The less it was treated as a medical problem, the more the infrastructure, starting with Reagan, tens of billions of dollars have been poured into policing instead of into public health. This was an either or, and
it was more profitable for them to pour it into policing.
Well, it was more profitable for Purdue Pharma and the others to produce, OxyContin, where they made tens of billions of dollars, rather than actually treat pain in a way that would have been, been medicalized. And so what we have is the worst of all possible, the worst of the worlds, which is that we now are aware that this opioid addiction is a medical problem, but there isn't the money, there isn't the infrastructure to deal with it. So working class whites who may be given more sympathy are not given more treatment.
Yeah. Good morning, Alberto.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. How you doing, Senator? And how you doing, Senor David?
Doing good, Alberto. Doing good.
I heard the conversation about Georgia, the guy who got killed in Georgia, murdered and not slaughtered, who got lynched in murder in Georgia, because that's what that was, right?
Yes.
And I mean, you know what got to me, what I saw that everybody went out there to start the big rallies about this thing. And I had to ask myself, I didn't know about this. I thought I was up with the news, and I didn't know about this. This happened in February. So my question to all of you that live in Georgia, was it not known, or what happened?
I think that it was, Georgia, a lot of these rural areas, Egberto, things happen and it doesn't really get outside of these rural areas. Got to understand, parts of Georgia still has problems with internet.
Right.
So a lot of things that happen is kind of insulated. It stays kind of in the community. They knew, the video was out, but the video was leaked. So I heard the video was leaked. So now that this video is out and everybody's seen the video and it's putting a national spotlight, it's put pressure on them to do something.
So my question is, did you know about it? That in where's that place? Is it close to Atlanta or?
No,
It's,
Brunswick
it's
Brunswick
south.
it's a big city. It's southeast Georgia. It's you know, on the coast. It's
Uh-huh.
it's an Atlantic coastal city close to the Florida border, and that part of Georgia is you know, is not as you
Not
know,
as black.
no, it is right. I mean,
Oh,
it is. It's not as black as Southwest Georgia, you know,
okay.
where Albany is, but it is. I mean, everywhere in rural Georgia, there are, you know, south of Atlanta, there are lots and lots of black folks.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Because I was, I felt so bad, first of all, that I didn't know, professing to be somebody who is up to speed on what's going on. I just felt horrendous that, wow, how did something like this slip us? Philando Castile and Brown and all of those guys, we were in it right away. But then this one, it just seemed delayed that after 2 months, this is when we found out something. And then the other thing that bothered me is when I see the rallies and all, it's a rally of a lot of black people. When are we going to see rallies where murders like this occur, where a lot of white people are in there too? In
yeah.
other words, this is the murder of a human being, and everybody, if they were to put themselves in the space of Ahmaud Arbery, they would have to say, my life is in danger. I wrote a little piece saying it makes me as a black man feel vulnerable, because not only do I have a certain percentage of police officers that are a threat to me, the reason why I try to never be in the same space with police officers as much as I can, but now the average white person with a grudge, knowing that there may be no prosecutions, is now one sees all can also see me as a target and know that they may not have anything to work. Well, now that it's international now, they have something to worry about. But I mean, it puts a certain feeling of vulnerability in people of color, but specifically black men, because the people that we see lying on the ground all of the times are black men. The people we see with their, and I don't want to hear the argument about, well, in Chicago's ghetto and New York's ghetto and black people killing themselves. And then my thing is, okay, so 90% of blacks are killed by blacks. But guess what? 88% of whites are killed by whites. Silly argument, different socioeconomic argument altogether. But I would have loved to see a lot of white people in that rally to show that this isn't something we as a country stands for.
Mm-hmm. You know what it reminds me of, Egberto? Remember when we were in St. Louis?
Yes.
And we marched with Netroots and we were
Yes.
downtown. And remember, I took that shot of these two ladies, that two white women that came out of nowhere, that they weren't even with us.
Right.
And they stood between us and the police.
Yes.
Literally between our group of black and brown people that were marching and the police. They stood between us and literally just stood there and like dared those officers to do anything.
Yes.
Two older white women. It was amazing. I'm gonna have to find that shot just so I can share that.
Yeah, you did take that picture. I remember. Yeah, you did take that picture, and that is, I think a lot of us now with this sphere, in my humble opinion, Tamara, we have to now call out on white people. David, you included, on white people. You have to be out there in the look. The truth of the matter is, there's a damn large number of damn good white people out there that aren't in the game that this guy is in. But you have to start showing up. You really have to start showing up. You got to be out there saying, this is not what we stand for. This is not a black thing. Remember, this issue is not a black issue. This is a white issue. This is the issue with white people doing wrong. Just like we call out black people doing wrong, we're supposed to call out all humans doing wrong, in my humble opinion.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And that's why I love David so, because he's standing in the gaps with us.
David is my hero. I told you that so many times. David is my hero. I love David. you found yourself a great partner, Tamara.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate that. I just want to say that what we don't need allies, we need accomplices. That those women that you're talking about, they were accomplices. They weren't just allies. And so I really think that we have to see what's going to happen in Brunswick. We need to reach out to European Americans in Brunswick. They may have been the last ones to hear about it. Because segregation, not just segregation, but the separate and unequal, the Jim Crow system is alive and well, and it cuts off neighbors from other neighbors. Uh, the white part of town doesn't know what's happening in the black part of town, and it takes getting on national news before the European Americans realize that there's something really rotten in their own home environment. And
I think they were embarrassed, David. I think that being from rural Georgia and knowing how you're right, very separate the worlds are in rural Georgia. I think that when they found out, now I think some of them are a little embarrassed. I don't know how they're gonna, I don't know what's gonna happen from here with the black and white community, but I hope this is an opportunity that they start to realize that they need to talk and do more together.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there are church leaders and and other folks of goodwill who are reaching out. I'm hoping. I would expect that we're gonna see more of that. But you're absolutely right, Egberto, that rally, and of course the rally is potentially a spreader of the virus. But we really have. Let's reach out to people in Brunswick and urge them to come on the show, to talk about what's happening. But what I've been saying is that the way that this touches the European American community is that it really makes the entire police apparatus unaccountable, and susceptible to corruption. So you cannot have a police force doing this to African Americans, to the African American community. That is the criminal justice system, because these guys were not cops. The elder is a retired cop, but you can't have the criminal justice system doing this to African Americans and not have an impact on the European American community. It's just impossible.
Watching that video, I heard you say, Tamara, you couldn't watch the video. I wanted to see the video, and what was so concerning about the video was it was a picture of two cars, two horses that block you from being able to come in, you get in but you can't leave, right? The whole street blocked by the guy who was doing the tape, which I think was also a pursuer. And I think it almost seemed to me, the tape, in my opinion, took on a flavor of those people, those voyeurs who want to take a picture or take a video of us killing that what, or of us doing something to what. The truth is, I don't know that they necessarily wanted to kill that guy, but that guy being surrounded, confronted, he naturally, I think what they wanted to do is what they do a lot of times to black men. and that is just to embarrass you because I can show you that I'm embarrassing you and you can do nothing about it. And this guy,
Control.
control, and this guy decided to fight and say, you know what? Gun or no gun, I am not going down not fighting. I'm not going down appeasing you. I'm not going down. I'm he was a man, put it that way. He
Yeah,
was a man.
I
You
agree.
know,
I
there
agree.
were three guys and two pickup trucks, and he was a man.
Can you? And he probably thought, are they trying to kidnap me? What
Right.
they're trying to catch me? They're trying to kidnap me. What are they? I would fight too. Like,
Hmm.
like I would fight too. I would.
I find it amusing, right, that they said, oh, the reason he got, they're on right wing radio now. They're saying the reason he got shot was that he became violent. Black people always get that violent thing, right? The violent black man and the angry black woman, right? That is a modus operandi, right? So he was angry, and it is the same thing with Trayvon Martin, right? He fought back. What the hell? I'm sorry. What are you
The
doing?
hell are you supposed to do?
What are you doing following Trayvon Martin coming back from a store? What is he supposed to believe? Hell, he should fight because he doesn't know what he knows that he's doing nothing wrong. Why should he be why shouldn't he be concerned about somebody following? Same applies to Arbery. Why shouldn't he be concerned that these guys are trying to corner him and fight back?
Yeah.
How dare we fight back, Egberto? How dare we fight back?
Right.
Yeah. I
Sorry
think
for
we ought to
talking.
not get ahead of ourselves too much on because the evidence really we need to um, uh, uh, make restrain from making assumptions about what the investigation is going to uncover. I mean, the video evidence as far as the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, was concerned. It took the Brunswick District Attorney 2
One day.
months to do it, and in one day they had looked at the video and said that this is probable cause for arrest for felony murder, first degree murder. So let's see how it plays out. Let's help our brothers and sisters in Brunswick reach out. I mean, they've got national attention now. Let's see that they get local, support, solidarity from the best elements of the European American community, and that this trial take place, and all three of these guys be put on trial, and you know, we will, I think that's the best way to proceed. We can't jump to the conclusions that the right-wing white supremacist media are doing. But
Egberto, but let's let Egberto go. One second, David. Egberto, you want to give us a national update?
Yeah.
Yes. One quick thing here. Everybody is hoping that we're going to have this V-shaped return to the economy. In other words, that the economy, that the 33 million people that are out of a job right now are simply out of a job, and as soon as we go back to work, it's going to be just fine. I want to warn people that we are going to return to a completely different economy. We have to realize, number one, capitalism knows how to be efficient, and in its efficiency, it knows that. Guess what? Coronavirus forced us to do a very large test. And that test involved, how does it work when all those people we care for work at home? Can we still do the business we want to do? Oh, yes, we can. So therefore, those people invested in REITs, REITs, and all these other things, be ready for that to go down, because corporations are going to see the efficiency of having a lot of people work at home, still maintaining their power, and at the same time, just use the menial workers that have to go outside and do the work as the sacrificial lambs of this system. So therefore, as we go back to work, let's make sure to force Congress to put in procedures for us. They want us back to work. Let's make sure they give us health care. They want us back to work. Let's make sure they give us family leave. They want us back to work. Let's make sure they give us tuition free college so that we can improve on ourselves, because the new economy that we're going to is going to be even more bifurcated than it is today.
Oh, that's good, Egberto, on so many levels. You hit that right on the hit that nail on the head.
And they are the Fed is pouring trillions into keeping the stock market up.
Yes.
And the rest of us can, go to hell.
Yes.
And I mean, I think one of the side effects is going to be the destruction of small business in this country, because they're just any small businesses that are service businesses where people have to come into the store are crippled now because of social distancing, and other people who are independent contractors, who are self-employed. I always joke that means self-exploited.
I like that. I want to steal that one.
Okay, yeah. So the self-exploited folks that are out there are really going to be making bricks they'll have to gather their own straw. So there really is big business now. The corporations and the banks present small businesses with an existential threat. And whether those folks realize it or not, there's an antagonistic relationship between the little entrepreneurs and these giant corporations that the system, the capitalist system, is consolidating itself. It's concentrating wealth in fewer and fewer hands, and the small businesses account for 60% or more of the employment in this country. So you destroy small businesses, and the unemployment goes down, and you're trapped. You don't have the demand. 70% of the economy is based on consumer demand. So
let's let Egberto go, Al, because he stays with us for about 15, 20 minutes. Egberto, you can find Egberto on Politics Done Right Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. This man is everywhere. Politics Done Right with EgbertoWillies.com.
Thank you so kindly for being on the show. Thank you, guys, and y'all have a wonderful day. Senator and David, bye-bye.
Thank you,
Egberto. Yeah. So just continuing that point, the workers that are out there partly what that's going to do is that there's not going to be any V-shaped recovery. We're not going to bounce back. Not unless there is a real change in the way that the federal government's policies towards the epidemic are changed, and
and that will require people. We having a change in leadership, because I don't think that those that are there are going to do anything different. We're going to definitely have to. June 9th is the primary here in Georgia. I'm hopeful to see change with a lot of leadership here, local to Georgia. November 3rd, we got to make sure we get people to the polls and get people electing people to actually do something different. I am about what's about to happen with small businesses. I saw a Facebook post, David, that talked about independent contractors and these small mom and pop shops that won't make it out of this pandemic, that won't bounce back. They can't. I mean, they were already doing just barely making it.
Right.
They won't bounce back because they're coming back so slowly. I don't think people are running back to restaurants and running back to do anything. I think everybody is very careful about, how much they're doing now that we are allowed to move around pretty freely in the state. So I don't think these businesses are going to come back, and I'm very concerned about a lot of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the overall situation in the economy is that if those businesses don't come back, if they don't rehire workers, if they don't, then the demand goes down. Consumer demand goes down because people even if they have enough savings, which is, to last more than a few months, which is only a tiny section of the population, has enough resources. 60% of the people don't have $1,000 for an emergency. So 40% don't have $400 for an emergency. So those people are going to be very, very, very reluctant to spend whatever they have in discretionary spending.
Yes,
And
Hinesville, Georgia business is being hit very hard. It was very bad before the virus.
yeah, yeah. So and one of the ways that you could relieve people of this is to simply do there are three things that could be done. One is keep people on the payroll. None of this stuff about unemployment insurance. Keep people on the payroll. Uh, and the second thing is universal health insurance. There's 30 million people unemployed. 20 million of them were getting their health insurance. 10 million of them didn't have any health insurance, and 20 million of them were getting their health insurance through employers.
So, David, let's hold that thought. We'll come back to it in just a second. We do have a guest, Brian, who wrote an article. Hi, Brian. Welcome to the broadcast.
Oh, you're sideways, Brian.
Can you hear it? Can you even?
Am I?
Now you're upside down.
No, he was fine. He's actually fine. You're making me dizzy. I don't know why I'm looking like that on your screen. No, put it back. Leave it alone, Brian. Leave it. That's good.
Is that good?
Yes. Brian, you wrote a story. Brian is a journalist and wrote a story about the Ahmaud Arbery incident here in Georgia. Brian, welcome to the broadcast. He's having some issues with his. Yeah, I would definitely want to bring him back. He actually wrote a story. He's a journalist. I invited him to the broadcast to tell more in detail about what was happening. Like I said, I'm following this. I'm gonna be whatever resource I need to be to all of this, but it's so hard to absorb. Black man after black man watched, just killed and murdered, gunned down. This is hard. As a mom, it's extremely hard. David.
I'm really very interested to hear what he has to say about the the police and the criminal justice system in Brunswick, and how what kind of reforms have been made. We've been struggling in the outskirts of Atlanta to bring black lawyers and prosecutors and into a system that's been dominated by white supremacists for since the Jim Crow era, and it's been a fight in every county, Clayton and Douglas County and all around, and certainly the counties further north of Atlanta, to come into the 20th century. Never mind, the 21st century. So it's very possible that this whole criminal justice system in the Brunswick area is still run by a bunch of good old boys. And that's what's reflected in the unwillingness to prosecute McMichaels. The elder McMichaels. Here he is.
Hey, Brian.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. So, Brian, you've been writing, you've been following. Introduce yourself and tell us what you know about this Ahmaud Arbery case?
Yes, my name is Brian Crawford. I'm a writer from The Final Call. I have been following this story for the past couple of weeks. Last week, prior to the McMichaels being arrested, um, basically, it's what we know is that obviously there was a video that was released. It was released by a local attorney in the area who said that the reason he released it was because there wasn't a lot of information coming from the police department. What we also know is that, there were some inconsistencies in the police report where it was said that Ahmaud Arbery was shot 2 times when he was actually shot 3 times. And obviously we know it took 74 days for an arrest to be made. So, that's what we know right now. And obviously on the ground, the people are relieved that an arrest has been made, but there's still more to come. So, we're just kind of sitting back and waiting now.
So the person that was actually filming this, who was that person?
Well, it's believed. Well, actually, I think it was confirmed that there was a third witness. His name was William Bryan. I think his nickname was Roddy or something like that. It was confirmed that he was the person who recorded the video, and I believe he shared it with Attorney Tucker, who released it.
So why was he following because he saw something suspicious? Was he with those guys? Was he with the shooters? Why was he filming?
I do believe he was an associate of the McMichaels. I have no idea why he was filming or had filmed that altercation though. That I can't answer.
Yeah, and I look forward to more information. I know this is a developing case. This is a developing story. You definitely have to come back and share more because I'm sure you'll continue to follow it. This, racism in Georgia is alive and well. This is no surprise. It's sadly, we know this stuff exists in Georgia.
Ryan, what would you say? How would you characterize the Brunswick criminal justice system? The whole court and police system. Has it gone through any transformation from the time of Jim Crow, or is it still run by the same good old boys? The old white power structure. What's your sense of that? I'm assuming you're from Brunswick and you know the.
Not from Brunswick,
No, I'm actually not from Brunswick. I am following the case, but to your point, I think the feeling of the people, particularly from the people that I've spoken to, do feel that there is a good old boy network at play here. Ahmaud Arbery's mother actually said that. She felt that she was in trouble, her words, when she spoke with the first district attorney who kind of, dismissed it. He also, we know he wrote the letter, in his recusal letter, he mentioned, some of the things that Ahmaud Arbery had done. He was actually an investigator when Ahmaud Arbery was arrested for bringing a gun to a high school game. Gregory McMichael was the investigator on that particular case. And also in this letter, the DA wrote that, I think it was Ahmaud Arbery's brother who had been in some trouble and things like that. So when you put all of that together, then yes, the people do feel that, there is a structure at place that they do not trust, that they won't feel will give them justice. And they feel like that obviously because it took 74 days for an arrest to be made.
Wow. So
they're trying to paint the picture that he was a troublemaker.
Right. It's one of those things we see it all of the time, in cases like this where a young man who is killed will have his background dug up and kind of put out to the public almost as a justification for what happened. But the crazy thing about that is nobody knows about these things ahead of time. This always comes out after the fact. Yeah. And then people feel like, oh, okay, well, he must have been a thug or a criminal, so he kind of had it coming. And so that is the issue that's at play. When you talk about, that racism and that character assassination from the grave, a person has to defend themselves posthumously. and, have to have his loved ones, defend him, defend his character, even though he may have had, run-in with a police officer. So, it's that kind of thing that's at work and at play there, but we see it a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
fortunately. Yeah. Anything else you want to share with us, Brian? We definitely want you to come back as this story continues to develop. We definitely want to hear how, hear your thoughts and continue to follow it.
Yeah, most definitely. I think everybody should, continue to practice activism online with I Run with Mod. Obviously, when you talk about the case, just use those hashtags. I run with Mod, Ahmaud Arbery, just to kind of, raise awareness of this case, because, this is not over. This is still a long process that we have to go through. And, obviously people want justice to be served. And you can follow my particular part of the story in the Final Call newspaper that's sold across the country. And you can also see it online as well.
Thank you. Thank you for covering the story, and we look forward to
Where are you reporting? Where can we find your reporting, Brian?
My reporting can be found in the Final Call newspaper, finalcallnews.com.
Say that again. Final
Call.
Yes,
sir. News.com.
Final Call News?
Newspaper, yes.
Finalcallnewspaper.com.
I'll get him right. Thank you. I appreciate you, Brian. We look forward to you coming back and sharing more as this story continues to develop. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Black in America, David. Black in America. This is reality. This is why we need a change in structure. This is why we need a change in leadership. This is not why we need to vote. This is why we need to elect the right people. This is why we need to hold people accountable. So much work to do.
And let's get hip to that game. They run it every time, impugning the person's character, the black man's character. Oh, and exactly as you said, he had a tendency toward violence, right? As opposed to, as Egberto was saying, standing up for himself, as anybody would have the right to do. So
she says Georgia, like Florida and many other states, are saturated with blood family ties at every level of the public, non-elected government, and private business, nonprofit sectors. Yeah,
I agree, and that's exactly, those are the people that have no love for the poor whites that are in that area. That's something to keep in mind. They are just one step above the black people, and white people have to really come to grips with that. There's a bunch of bullies that run the local political and economic establishment, and they hire folks that they don't hire black people. They hire poor whites. And they expect those poor whites to be subservient, and in just the same way, if you're a poor white and you try to stand up for yourself, you don't get shot, but you do get fired, right? That's the difference. You have the privilege of not being shot. Welcome to the world of white supremacy. Your privilege is not being shot. Come on, folks.
What a privilege. Like, we won't kill you.
Yeah. So, that supposedly makes you in a preferred category. Meanwhile, these guys, the guys like the McMichaels, I'm projecting here. I don't know anything about them, but a guy who's a retired police detective, who's been working for the district attorney's office for 20 years. He has clout. He's not just a, beat cop, right? He's got connections with the whole, power structure establishment in Brunswick. And that's why they left him. He was one of the untouchables, right?
Until the world saw that video.
Yeah,
Now
right,
this thing is,
right.
everybody's
And
seen the video, and they have to do. They force their
yeah.
hand to do
Well,
something.
then what happens is that the Brunswick power structure becomes this tiny little, mechanism, and in the larger scheme of things. And then I'm sure they all feel picked on now. Oh, the
Yeah.
liberal media, it's almost like the civil rights days with the outside agitators, right? Our Negroes are just perfectly fine with Jim Crow. It's these outside agitators that have created the problem.
Yes. And on that note, David, we're at the top of the hour. I love that you just ended that, because that is the absolute truth. I am Tamara Johnson Shealy, candidate for the United States Senate. You can donate, you can volunteer, you can be a part of my campaign at tamaraforgeorgia.com. I need all the help I can get. We're getting closer and closer to November, so I need you to come on board. You can find Mr. David at Acknowledge the Divide right here on Facebook. You can always find Mr. Egberto Willies at Politics Done Right here on social media, on Facebook, everywhere. That man is really literally everywhere. David, same time, same channel.
Power to the people.
Power to
you, Tamara, and Senator Tamara. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Have a great week, everybody.